Okay, welcome back to the Jiu-Jitsu Mindset. I'm Pete Deeley, and I've gotten some nice feedback on our t-shirts lately. The Stronger Humans and the Equal a Safer World has been popular, and of course, Submission Coffee still unnoticed as a performance-enhancing drug. So you can go to the jujitsumindset.com and you can get either of those there. Um, as I've said before, yeah, the divine has smiled on me, week in and week out to bring me wonderful people to talk to, and today is no exception. So, Professor James Driskill, thank you for spending some time with me. I'm super grateful.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm kind of curious, usually with the opposite question you might usually get asked, which is sort of if jujitsu hadn't come in and been such a powerful force in your life, where do you think you would have gone? What direction were you headed if not in this direction?
I think martial arts in general always sort of guided me away from some of the things that I was drawn to,
Okay.
and through like maybe addictions or too much fun time, not enough discipline. Martial arts in general gave me a little bit of that, but it wasn't until I found jiu-jitsu and Hixson that I really, I think, understood, because before that I think most of my teachers had been well-meaning
Right.
novices,
Yeah.
and now I have this like legitimate master and his students, who are also in their own right amazing. And it I think without meeting him, I was on a path. I mean, I was homeless when I met Hickson,
Mm,
and I had been through a lot of dark places, and I think that very likely that I probably would have been a drug addict or in jail, or
yeah.
just not living up to my potential without that discipline and without that rhythm that training gave me, and
Yeah.
I'm very grateful, especially for jujitsu. I love the other martial arts, and I love striking, and I still
Right.
do striking a bit, but I don't know, something about the grappling had a deeper sense of community. And maybe it was just a representation of this is a very high level grappling school, and my striking
Sure.
up to that point had been just kind of, whatever.
Right. I'm curious about your thoughts of this idea, like as it relates to addiction in particular. When I have listened to people who have come out of heavy duty addiction and then not, one of the things that has been a theme is like, I worked so hard as an addict to sustain that lifestyle. And
Hmm.
so, although, you didn't go down that road, I'm just curious if the energy that were you just looking for a place to put all that energy and then, you kind of, I feel like Hixson would be a force multiplier for jujitsu. I mean, if you're in the presence of him, you're getting
Yeah.
such a pure, amplified experience relative to other things. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I can tend to be a little obsessive, and
Mm,
it's something that I work on daily to try to balance,
right.
because I'll spend all day training, or I'll spend all day reading, or I'll spend all day playing a video game, or I'll spend all day eating,
Yeah.
or I'll tend to overdo things,
Yeah.
and when I was younger, I'll spend all day taking drugs and partying and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so I think seeing uh having a way to express some of that obsession in a way that's healthy, that
Yeah.
brings me skills that are useful, not even just to myself, but to others. Hickson
Sure.
gave me the opportunity to teach very early in my training. And and so yeah, you're right. Like having somewhere to focus that obsession that wasn't just random
Yeah.
and had some structure to it and had some benefit for the community and myself was very helpful for me.
Yeah, I find it interesting in myself. I share a similar trait, and I can at at this point in my life at 55, one of the things I find interesting about my relationship to that particular tendency in myself is that my I've always had a very high energy level, but there's a tamping down that I think it is a is the first signs of fatigue of living. And I don't mean that to sound, but I've lived with myself this long that like my brain is like, hey, do we really want to sit on this idea and and really grind it into the ground versus, hey, you've done that
Yeah.
so many times, do you relax? I think of it as a sign, maybe the first signs of maturity in me, because I've been able to harness my energy in productive ways. But
I tell
sometimes,
my, oh, sorry.
no, no, not at all. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a joke, it's like, and my wife hates it, but sometimes, we're just thinking about all the things that we should do on a daily basis to stay healthy and happy and avoiding, the things that maybe we're drawn to from an addictive standpoint that make us feel good in the moment. And thinking about having to do taxes and exercise and get up early. And I joke and I say, man, it's kind of hard to stay healthy and alive. It's almost not worth it. And my like, stop that. That's not funny. It's like, oh,
Well,
funny, but
my mother has been fond of telling me from the beginning, like, look, it's hard to be a human being, like to not expect it to just be an easy road. And I think, there's that cliche of like easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. And,
yeah.
um, I think generally it's true because when I'm on Instagram, Instagram has done a good job of understanding what I want to see. Like the algorithm, like I experience the algorithm and in many ways, I'm very happy about it. But I have a strong interest in regenerative agriculture and sort of how food and
Yeah.
soil and the um, but if it's at night, I almost feel like someone's given me a set of things I need to research, and I can,
Hmm.
just because I'm like, oh, that's interesting, that's interesting.
Did you know before this meeting that I'm also into regenerative agriculture?
I did some research, but that didn't show up. So,
Huh.
I'm glad you're interested as
Interesting.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a nearly closed loop regenerative cannabis farm that my wife and I owned in
Okay.
Oregon for years.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was
It must have been amazing to just have some control over how something is produced. I mean, we have so little of that. We consume what's served up, and it's hard to know.
yeah.
It's hard to
Yeah,
know what's what.
I feel very um, good that I'm certain that the land that I used to farm on was improved
Yes.
by my
Yes.
time there,
Right.
as opposed to, kind of
Degraded.
depleted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The what does it mean to be healthy in this country and the consequences of the disconnection between understanding what you're putting in your body and how you
Yeah.
should understand it.
And our goal was to create medicine. We weren't creating
Yeah.
fun drugs. We were creating medicines, especially for my mother-in-law who was dealing with cancer and many others who reached out to us for help. And so we wanted to be as clean as possible. And I found it to be such a fun puzzle, like jujitsu,
Yes.
to try to
Nice.
figure out how do I do this cleanly, regeneratively, organically, all this stuff when it's not easy. It's easy to go spray it with some chemical that kills all the bugs, and who cares what it does to your
Yeah.
body when you ingest it?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this guy, Will Harris, who runs White Oak Pastures out of Bluffton, Georgia. And um, years and years of incredible discipline and uh, carefulness with what he has turned, this traditional cattle operation into an extraordinary regenerative farm that has so many different species working in concert with each other. And although the amount of money we spend in this country on diabetes and things that often are controllable, which feels like a vicious cycle, there's
Yeah.
also a virtuous cycle that can happen. Like,
Yeah. So people watching, go support regenerative farms.
yes,
Go buy stuff from local regenerative farms as
amen.
much as you can.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pleased to hear that, and I couldn't agree more. When you mentioned Hixson and sort of your it sounds like it was a massive pivot in your life.
Hmm.
And I am curious, as in particularly in the early days, your acquisition of jujitsu knowledge, um, and jujitsu technique, how that was different than other things that you learned, especially given your teacher. I mean, it was an unusual opportunity, and I'm curious how you would describe it, why it was
I
different
think,
than other things.
yeah, I think a lot of things that I've learned in my life have always come with, am I learning the right thing?
Y-
Like there's
Yeah.
some level of, I need to learn five different perspectives so that I can figure out what combination of them is right. And with Hixson, I felt like everything he shows me is just right.
Yes.
It's just, it works on everybody. It works on the big guy, it works on the skinny guy, it works on the tall guy, it works on the young guy, it works on the wrestler, it works on the striker. It was just so well thought out. And so there was that aspect of feeling confident that I don't really need to go look for other options, even
Right.
though I still did, especially as a purple belt. We all go get online and start, what did that guy do in that
Yeah,
competition? I
right.
want to try that. But for all the things that I draw on to feel like I can defend myself from someone who means me harm, those are those beginner things that he taught me when I was the white belt. And you just keep sharpening that stuff and then adding whatever fun little elements to it. But then the other aspect I found was that with a lot of things that we learn, we can, if we're inclined, we can kind of pretend that we're better at it than we are, and
Yes,
it's
yes.
it's hard. It's hard sometimes. Like if I want to get my car repaired, I don't know enough about
Yeah,
car mechanics to tell if that guy is doing a good job or not. It's just if 3 months if my car breaks down again, I'm like shit.
yeah.
But with jujitsu, there's a pretty immediate kind of indication there. Like nobody can really fake that they're better than they
Right.
are. The
Yes.
mats don't lie.
Right.
And what a wonderful place where we can really kind of prove that to each other without necessarily really having to even go as hard as we can.
Right.
Even in a flow roll, you can feel with people whether they really understand these
Right.
concepts or not. So
Yeah. Yeah. That
I
was
like that.
one of the, someone who's become a good friend of mine and has been on this podcast a couple of times was this Professor Jason Hawkins, who wrote a lovely book called, Light on the Gentle Art. But in our conversations, he was like, the things that I learned, um, were the most profound when the person instructing me, or just in the midst of rolling, where it was effortless rather than overpowering. It was, in the essence of, in the experience of something that's correct, that's right. It was, it just happened without any real sense of force. Now, sometimes I feel like that's a little overstated in terms of practice. Like strong people, like it, I think we can't deny that that plays a meaningful role. But I think the essence of what he's saying, I think, is absolutely true. That even in a flow role, when someone's doing something accurately, as you say, that what you learned from Hixson had universal applicability. Um, I feel like somebody who's mastered something, it comes off as, hey, I can do this slow, fast. I'm going to be able to do this no matter what.
Yeah. Even
Yeah,
now, like when I'm helping him teach his lessons to the people that fly in from all over the world, I know that my job when I'm demonstrating some technique that he wants them to feel, and they're instructed by him to resist
right.
so that they can really feel
Yeah,
what it's like
nice.
to do this against resistance. I know that my job is not to make it happen however I can
Right,
using my athletic gifts or
right.
youth or whatever advantage I might have over them, or even a technical knowledge that's beyond there so I could switch to a different move and trick them. I know that my job is to show them how effortless this could be if
Yeah,
only you understood these concepts.
right.
And that's beautiful to try
Yeah,
to watch people kind of start to get that. And a lot of them have seen it before in other areas, but learning that in a different move is always kind of like wow, like
yeah,
it
yeah,
never gets old. Learning how to make something so free and effortless without having to make a grunt or
yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah. Nice.
to make it happen.
That notion of invisible jujitsu is such a interesting and beautiful notion. And I try to think about how that idea plays out in my life in general. And what I mean by that is, I've often, as you say, the mats don't lie. I think that it's a very honest experience, jiu-jitsu, because as you say, it's clear. When someone has more skill to you, it's generally immediately apparent.
Yeah.
And that I was in the CrossFit community for maybe 10 years, and one of the things that I loved was the clarity of, well, you can snatch this, I snatch that. I, I'm stronger than you in this particular, domain.
Hmm.
And there was not, you couldn't really argue the point. You can be like, well, not really, because the yardstick was super clear.
Yeah, I remember doing CrossFit and I would always use the recommended weights for the women
Yeah,
as we
smart.
were
Yeah,
doing the
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And
smart.
some every once in a while, some guy would be like, "Well, you're using the women's weight." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna do what I want to do. If you want to have a problem about it, we can go outside and see who's tougher. But good job lifting more weight faster than me or whatever. Like, who cares?"
Yeah. Well, and who cares, I think is the key kind of phrase in that regard. Because starting jujitsu at 50, my ego was already crushed athletically. I'd already sort of uh, my joints there's no way to lie about my joints. When I put my hands up, this is what it means to put my hands up. God forbid I get arrested and that, say, hey, get
Was
those
it your
hands up.
shoulders?
Yeah, oh, my shoulders. I mean, I'm getting shot as soon as they tell me to put my hands up, because that's my professor joke on a little tiny tournament I was at that happened to win a match. He's like, the ref's going to tap Pete just by raising his arm. So,
Is it like frozen shoulders? I get worried about guys like you who say that and are kind of like, you know, uh, nonchalant about it. That I hope that you haven't become myopic and that you think this is something you have to live with forever. I feel like I don't know what your issue is, but I feel like a lot of people give up too early, and you could be able to reach up and give in like a like a
yeah.
good citizen.
Well, just to make it like, what I've spent a lot of time trying to do it, and my last visit was to a surgeon, and they had sent over my MRIs, and the woman at the reception desk is saying, "Don't spend the money to see the surgeon. I can tell you right now, you have to have your shoulders replaced. Like, there's no sense in
Replaced,
that."
both shoulders replaced.
Yes, and then the MA came, then a medical assistant came in and says, "Look, buddy, there's no reason to see the doc. You need to get these things replaced." And then I'm like, well, I'm here to see the doctor. Like, let me hear him say it to me. He came in, he's like, you are not very smart. Like, how many times do we got to tell you the same thing? He says, the bones are misshapen. You got, the end of your humeral head is you just need to get them replaced. I have a good friend, Professor Tom Wiggins. He got both of his shoulders replaced. And when I watch him put his hand up, it feels like a magic trick. I'm like, oh my God, if I could get a cup off the top shelf, I'd feel amazing. I got to time it
And
with my notion of death. I'm going to do it at 60 because you supposedly only can do it every 20 years. So I figure
oh,
that'd take me to 100 if I did it at 80. Yeah.
80's a hard cutoff. Yeah, oh, you can do it again
Yeah,
in
do it
80.
again. I
Okay.
get me to 100.
Well, they
Anyway,
say all we
yeah,
have to do is live to the first major life extension, and then maybe you'll live forever.
that's right. Longevity, escape velocity, right? You just got to get
Yeah.
to 2035. Well, good. I'm waiting for the robots to get in there and fix it without a surgery.
Yeah.
Well, my guess is in the circle you've been in with Hixson, you got a chance to probably roll with all kinds of people. And I'm curious, I mean, maybe it's a competition role, maybe it was a role just in the course of, your instruction or people coming through. If I was to ask your lizard brain, like, hey, what was the most, impactful role, memorable role, what would be the one that popped out and you're like, hey, yeah, this one I absolutely was the most.
To pick one is really difficult. My mind floods with all these different roles, matches, street fights, and things
Yeah.
that I've been in, and it's really hard to pick one. I think maybe it's a little bit cliche or whatever, if you will, but most of the people that have seen Hixson and seen movies like Choke and read his stuff
Right.
have heard the stories about him kind of forcing us to choose what submission that he will catch us with.
Yeah.
And then, very specifically, like, which arm from what position, top or bottom kind of thing. And and then he'll give us a countdown, of like depending on how difficult it is, but usually it's around 30 seconds or something, and it's like, all right, all I got to do is avoid that one thing. I
Yeah,
can
you
give
know
him
it's
every
coming.
other thing. I can give him my foot, I can give him my neck, I can give him my other arm. I just got to protect this one arm that I chose. And and by the time he gets to 25, you're like, shit, shit. That was always very impactful. And we would try to do that to our students and stuff too, and pay it
Sure.
forward, but
Yeah.
it was never quite in that right timing and never quite so effortless.
Right.
I'm trying to make it happen within that 30 seconds thinking, shit, I should have given myself a minute.
Well, just because I've had some really interesting stories that like Professor Fox was someone who came on, and he does a lot of protection of people and been a Marine, and um, I just to extend it maybe one more fight or role. Um, in terms of a violent experience, I mean, I think about, you talk about street fights. I think about the street fights I was in as a kid. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't want to, as I became an adult, my sense of the consequences of those things got refined. So I don't want
Yeah.
to express any toughness I don't have because,
Hmm.
as quickly as I became a full-grown man, I recognized the consequences are super different. Um,
The
and
risk reward is way skewed off. I don't want
Way
to deal with
skewed
it.
off. Yes, that's it. Yeah. And I had a number of relatives who never really adopted that. So I had the sense of, hey, don't be like this because look at what they go through, which was
You had to be extra conservative. You had to make up for them. Yeah.
in a certain sense, yeah, because they would obligate you to violence. I'd be out there and they're like, come on, we're not going to take this. And
I used to carry 22-inch zip ties in my pocket for in case my friends started getting feisty at bars. I would zip tie them and make us all leave because I was tired of them picking fights with people.
that's fantastic. Oh, yeah, had I known that
And they
back then.
knew I had them. They knew I had them. If they
Sure,
get so
sure that
drunk, they'd forget.
So, I mean, one of the things about, when I say I've been in competitions, I don't mean to express anything like grand. I mean, like just the local fun competitions that I've experienced. But, my experience is still one of anxiety and like, what's this going to be like? But I recognize even though it's a more violent experience than rolling with people I know every day, it's also not violent in the way that, um, I feel I would be in danger in a street fight or something. And so, I don't know, as somebody who's had so much competitive experiences and all that, how would you draw the distinction of maybe the most difficult street fight you were in and the most difficult competitive role you've been in?
The competitive stuff, the things that stick out in my mind as far as competitions go are not any of the wins or any of that.
Yeah,
It's the times when I got cocky and thought I don't really need to train hard for this. I won the last 6 or 7 tournaments that I fought in. Everybody in my bracket is people that I've beat before already. I'm just gonna go and drink margaritas and smoke a cigarette the night before the competition, hang out with friends or whatever, and
yeah,
then going in there and then getting gassed immediately and just miserably fighting to survive for a whole round and then losing by points or something because I just don't have the energy to make it happen and
yeah,
feeling a discrepancy in technique where I feel like my technique is stronger, but I don't have the motor
right,
to
right,
make
yeah,
it happen, and I just got to sit there knowing that I have the skills, but not the will or the
yeah,
oomph or whatever. That's just torturous for me to think back on that, and it's
yeah,
such a good reminder to not get cocky and never get too big for your britches and stuff.
right,
And then for the street fighting kind of thing, I think I spent a good amount of time bouncing
Hmm.
like security at bars, which is a ridiculous job for a guy of my stature. I'm only like 5'10", like 165, 170 pounds or something. So nobody's intimidated by me.
Right.
So, I learned how to use my words very well
Right.
to do this kind of stuff, even though I had the skills to remove people or make them stop doing whatever they're doing. It was just so much more work for me. And then I tell my student who's working for me, who's a big scary guy, hey, tell this guy to get down off the table. And the guy's like, right, oh yes, right away, sir. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, he's afraid of me, just so you know. Like, you should have got down when I told you to.
Right.
But it was like in the street fight kind of thing, really learning to try to diffuse, use my words,
Yeah.
eat,
Nice.
eat, eat crow a little bit, even though I know if it comes to it, I can handle the situation. But like we said earlier, the risk reward is so skewed, and I have a lot of street fight stories that I could talk about and stuff, and some of them are really funny. Like there was one I remember. I taught a class at Hixson School on Wilshire in LA, and my little brother was visiting me from Texas. And the night before, my girlfriend, wife now, had painted all of my fingernails pink, and I didn't know how to get it off. So I taught the class with the pink fingernails, and then after class, I go to take my brother across the street to the grocery store. And this is 7 lanes on
Yeah.
Wilshire Boulevard in LA. It's a big street. And and so there's no crosswalk, so we're just waiting for cars to go by. And this one car stops and motions to let us pass. And I guess he thought we were going too slow, so he kind of lurched his car at us, and it
Whoa.
scared me. And
Sure.
I was, I don't know, that's maybe like a purple or a brown belt or something at the time. So I was overcoming a lot of the confrontational nature that I had when I first started. And I kind of liked to fight and confront and whatever.
Right.
And but I'd still drop into that if I got scared. And when he lurched his car at my little brother, I got scared.
Sure.
And then when he kind of cruised by, you know, rolling his window down, telling us to get the hell out of the way, I got really mad and cursed at him. And out of this little car got this ginormous guy.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, like, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this. I tell people all the time, if it hadn't been for all of my students starting to come out of the school onto the sidewalk,
Right.
watching what's happening, and my little brother, I would have run away.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I would have just,
Right.
I would have just fleed. Like, oh, nobody's looking. Okay, I'm out of here. But everybody's watching. I can't. So he, lumbers at me. He doesn't say anything. He just comes after me
Wow.
and tries to couple of haymakers at me. And I mean, I end up like Hixson special kind of clinch takedown, backpack choke. But I always think that the funniest part of that is this really huge guy. The last thing he saw were these pink fingernails come across his
Yeah.
vision in order to wrap his neck and put him to sleep in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard.
That's
And he's
awesome.
still to
Yeah.
this day thinking like that little metrosexual, maybe gay guy
Put
or
me
whatever,
put me right
just
out. Yeah.
beat the crap out of me. A tiny little guy. What the heck? What the heck's
Yeah.
going on?
I have a friend who's got, a collection of black belts, and he's a friend of mine that goes all the way back to high school and has got, just over his life, one martial art after another. He's sort of that. And um, one of my real fun moments with him was, the kids were the little kids because we were friends as our children were born. And I remember being at a birthday party of one of the little ones, and they were like, Uncle Dan, we want to know your most effective karate move, martial art moves. And so he's like, all right, well, all you guys get around here, says, all right, now get in your fighting stance. And so he's looking at him, he's putting his mean face on, and he's like, okay, you ready? And then he turned around and ran.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
he's like, this is the most effective,
Yeah, that's the
move that
first move that everybody should learn for sure.
yeah, absolutely. When you think about, people you teach and your observation of the community in general, do you have an opinion about like the role of competition in most people's development? Do you think a lot of people say, look, you should at least do one. Other people go, look, it's not relevant. Where do you come down on that?
I think it's not for everybody. I think for some people, learning the choreography of the moves is enough to give them a sense of confidence to just be able to hold their head up in the world and go about their life, and they're probably never going to get into any kind of altercation, and just learning concepts like connection and timing and how to move their weight around and things benefit their lives in so many ways. And to try to require them to go fight somebody is maybe inappropriate for some of those people. And then for others, they're like, okay, well, I get this, I get the connection, but what if he's really big, and what if he's a little bit more aggro and stuff? And for those guys who are kind of craving that test of might, if you
Yeah,
will,
yeah, yeah,
what a great what a great place to go where it's almost completely safe. People do get hurt, but there's a ref and there's rules and everybody's watching, and there's no striking and stuff. And so it's a wonderful opportunity. It's a tool that we
yes, yeah,
can use to deepen our understanding of what we already know, and to show us maybe what we might not know or understand. And I always thought competition was really great because my philosophy of my training was have no holes.
mm,
Whereas some people that are far more accomplished than me in competition, their philosophy is master one
mm,
specific thing, and so they're amazing at half guard sweeps or something like that. And so they win a bunch of stuff with this, but I was always like, I want to see, like, I don't want to be like a super expert at something more than other things. I just want to be well rounded and not be surprised by anything, and have a at least the ability to respond to novel problems.
yeah,
And so that was the where I went and found them, because you
yes,
get complacent just training with your own people all the time, especially with our style, which was very basic. I go
hmm
to competition and people be doing shit I've never seen before. I'm like,
yes,
wow, what is
yeah,
this?
yeah,
And it would catch me off guard, and I have
sure,
to figure out how to recover from that. And then I watch tape later. I'm like, oh, that's never happened to me again. So
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I had two conversations with Professor Chris Burns, and when I look at a lot of his his social media clips and whatnot, that no, she's one of the most recent ones was like, look, you need to know three guards, and and it harkens back to me, the basics are still the what drives everything. So someone came with some incredibly novel move and it was disruptive to your game. But the fact
Yeah.
that your fundamentals were what they were is where all this stuff lives. And
Yeah,
so
I think it's so fun and entertaining to train with somebody who is using techniques that I've never seen before,
mhm,
and see, does my conceptual understanding give me the tools to be able to respond to this in time before it,
yes.
you know, gets me completely out of position or whatever. I'm thinking like instances where somebody's starting to wrap some kind of worm guard control on me with the gi. I'm like, I
Mhm.
have no idea what you're doing, but I'm sitting there and letting them do it. I want them to kind
Yes.
of get as deep as they can. And then as soon as I start to feel like I can't allow them to go any further because I'm starting to become destabilized, whatever, now, okay, I'm starting to
Yeah.
resist a bit. And then, later I can learn how to stop them from getting into that. But I always love the idea of working backwards from the worst case scenario
Yes.
to the easiest scenario.
Earlier in our conversation, we talked a little bit about, you pivot from, a homeless and a lifestyle that might have been heading in a direction that wouldn't have served you well to one that served you very well. I'm curious, much in the same way, like I asked you about your most memorable role, do you have a most memorable story of you observing somebody in your circle of students where jujitsu impacted them in a way that surprised you or was the most impactful that you've ever seen?
I mean, I have a couple of students. One I'm thinking of who told me that at some point they were coming out of a store or something, and they saw like an angry guy kind of shaking his wife, and
Mm,
kind of like kicking at his kid, and then some other guy is coming over and trying, and then he's like getting after that guy. And my students said that they were, because they credited the training, not that they were able to go beat somebody up, but they were able to go over there and diffuse that situation with a calm heart,
yes.
keeping themselves safe so that they weren't, risking themselves, and being able to diffuse that and calm those people down, especially that really angry guy. That's not easy to do.
Right.
And you have to have a real quiet confidence, I think. So the guy has to see that he should not mess with you, but you also can't threaten him so that he loses face because then he's going to want to double down. And I was just really proud of
Yes.
that, feeling like that person gained so much confidence that they didn't have to go over there beating their chest, acting
Yes.
all tough to try to scare people out of it. They were like, I can handle this, but I can handle this peacefully. And I
Yes.
love that. Now, I also love seeing kids back when I ran Hixson's kids program come in super shy and sheepish. And then after, a few weeks or a few months or whatever, they're jumping around. They've got friends. They're confident. They can be still. They
Yes.
can be quiet. They're not just like jittery and all this kind of stuff like a lot of kids are these days. And I love seeing the calmness that comes over students through this sort of training.
Professor Lucas Hubo, my co-host, um, used this expression that I liked. He's like, kids come in and the ones that need to have things kind of tamped down, Jiu-Jitsu would tamp down a little aggressive nature to kind of recognize, hey, maybe I'm not what I think I am out there on the schoolyard or whatnot. And then the kids that need a little, boosting up that, hey, you're more capable than you think they are, that,
Yeah.
those two things happen. And I as a father of five and four of them
Wow.
girls,
Oh
yeah, I have a
man.
blended family of five kids. I mean, um, I have a particular affection to watch the little girls in kids class because I think as a boy coming up, particularly, in my era, whatnot, scrapping, wrestling, fighting as a child, like a child, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, did something to me positively, like it, to
Mhm.
equip me, to be a little less afraid, less. But I look at, my girls and they're particularly nowadays, like there's a real hesitancy to have them have. So when I see them in class, I think, oh, this is doing something to your psyche and your relationship to the world. And the gentleman who went and calmed the situation down, in some ways, I feel like it's an application of invisible jujitsu on its own. Like, that confidence requires a stress inoculation leading up to that. And I feel like rolling and that's why I think competition is useful is to raise your level of stress, work your way through it, recognize you're okay. I think it just gives you some tools for the next
Yeah.
stressful situation.
That makes me think of a blue belt competition that I did, and I had won all my competitions up to this point, and at this point, people are starting to say, "Oh, this can be easy for you. Oh, easy win, whatever." And I'm starting to feel pressure now,
Sure,
like
yeah.
I didn't feel before. And I remember as I was walking onto the mats, my heart was beating so fast, I thought I was going to pass out. I was literally watching the tunnel start to
Oh my
close in a
goodness.
bit. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so embarrassing if I pass out on the mats right here. And then over time, learning the breath work and just the visualization work that Hixson taught us and just the training in general, it got to the point where my coach would have to come up and slap me on the face hard to wake me up. You're like, hey, you're about to compete, bro. Like,
Yeah.
look like you're about to fight. Like, you look like you're napping. To go from the one end of the spectrum to another like that, and then find where the balance is,
Yes.
was really interesting for me.
Yeah, it's I should be, much more adept at breathing, but one small thing that came from the Hickson's book was the exhale as the controller of your heartbeat. And I still go into when I'm about to get on, particularly in a competitive situation, onto the mats, that focusing on my exhale as a way to control my heartbeat. Yeah, all of those things were, yeah,
Yeah.
very helpful. And I don't pretend that I'm good at it, but I can feel the effect even of not having kind of mastered that particular skill.
Even just focusing on exhaling completely in your normal life throughout the day.
Yes, yes,
So many of us are holding 30% of the air in the bottom of our lungs that just never gets changed. That creates anxiety,
yeah,
and it creates bad performance, even just walking around, standing. know, your diaphragm's not engaged, your transverse abdominis, all your core muscles start to get out of place, your ribs start changing shape,
Yeah.
your shoulder bones can start changing shape.
Yeah.
Those things can shape back, you know, if you make the right
Oh, okay.
connections when you engage your muscles, when you think about your posture, and when you understand how all these things work around the body, you can bend those bones right back into shape. But it takes quite a lot of awareness, attention, and work.
Okay. Well, maybe offline I'll ask you for a little advice that way. If you could save me two shoulder replacements based on
I don't know,
breathing, I'll
uh,
that's that should be worth it for me. But I mean, I'm a calm person in my exterior. I'm an anxious person on my interior. And when you talk to like, well, no, that's a calm person, but my internal experience is not that. Well, as you know, and I would love for you to come back, but I'm just curious as we kind of head to the end here, if you had if you don't have one, that's fine, but if you had a
oh,
superhero name.
I don't know, not really, but I always joked if I did any more MMA fights that my nickname walking out would be James the Doodlebug Driscoll, because my mom and my family used to call me Doodlebug when I was a little kid, and then it kind of rolls up into a ball and is armored and is pretty safe from harm, and I felt like that was kind of my style for
I
a
love
long
it.
time. You know, it's
Yeah,
like I feel like I'm kind of a master of defense more than offense. You know, of course, I know a lot of great submissions and stuff, but
sure.
I feel like if I want to show off, it's like, okay, get into some deep arm lock or get the heavy guy in side control and let me show you how to get out of here. And that's how I can show off.
I love it. I love it.
Just roll up in
Well,
a ball.
see, striking fear everywhere. The doodlebug is in town. Here he comes.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
Look at him rolling around.
Yeah, look at him. I love it. Well, listen, this was just a pleasure to do, and I'd love for you to come back.
I would love to.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So thank you for all your stories and your wisdom. Yeah, likewise.
Thank you, brother.